I'm Sam.
And I'm Ollie.
And thank you for tuning in to the very first episode of Booz podcast. Now, full disclaimer, we actually got really excited when recording and completely forgot to do an intro. So we are just going to get right into it. Thank you for tuning into our first episode, and I hope you enjoy. So how did you get into your love of everything macabre and awful and creepy?
It started at a very, very young age. It's been long, long ago. So I lived with my grandparents for a while growing up because my mom was in the military and my dad was a police officer in Odessa, Texas. And I had full range of everything. I used to watch sci-fi for fun. I remember watching Carrie as a young child. In my bio, I do talk about Primer Impacto, and if you're a little Hispanic kid, you know what that is. And they would play it like at 9 o'clock every night, and they don't hold anything back. They would literally show pictures of what they said was a chupacabra, which is probably a dog with mange.
Right, a little Chihuahua dog.
Yeah, one of those, the little Mexican dogs that don't really have a lot of fur. But I'm pretty sure it was one
Dante
of those.
from Coco.
Yeah.
It's called just call it a Mexican hairless dog.
Mm-hmm. They would show pictures of those. But it always was more dramatic, and that's probably something I'd put on Instagram too. I'll have to find a picture that they posted. And we lived on a ranch. We were kind of secluded. My grandparents lived on a ranch out in Sonora, and on the news source, it was a news channel for those of you who don't know what it is. It's a news channel, Mexican news channel, and they would show like carcasses of animals that were drained of their blood. So little 4-year-old me was like, holy shit, this is real. This is outside. My goats are going to die.
They're going to eat me.
I guess I was always just a paranoid little kid. So that sparked my interest. Like, I was always into the things that were weird, or like, I think maybe as a young child, maybe I don't know, maybe my therapist can tell me what this means, but as a young child, I was so scared of everything. So the way I combat my fears is by learning about them. So I guess that really sparked my interest, and then I started reading, scary stories to tell in the dark, and I had the original, like, three books, the collection.
The trio, the magical trio.
I had it all. So that's really, and I've just been spooky ever since.
I love those books. I remember I would like sit in my room with like the blanket over my head and have a little flashlight, and I'd be reading those books way into the night, and my parents would be asleep in bed, and I'd be like, oh, I'm thirsty. So then I'd race down the stairs and like get a quick glass of water and race back up and hope nothing freaks me out. And I still do it sometimes when I'm turning off all the lights in the garage. I like run back inside because I'm like, I hope no one's in my attic, and Huh.
That's strange. I wonder when I stopped doing that. Maybe, like, life happened, and I was like, if something happens.
It happens,
do
it.
If it gets me, then at least it'll be a cool story. Because I was watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. It was towards the end, and so where I live, like, I have a 2-story house that's completely empty. It's just me, because Gabriel's always out, and I heard, like, our doors close. Mm-hmm. They open and close because of the circulation in our house. But I heard something else. It sounded like somebody was there.
Oh, man.
So I go upstairs, I'm watching Sabrina, and I just kind of, like, turn my head towards all the doors. But, that's all I did. I'm still here. And I never go upstairs either, so somebody could be, like, living upstairs.
Just chilling up there.
Yeah, and I would not know. I should probably get that checked out.
Well, you have dogs, right? Do they warn you if someone's in the house?
They warn me if somebody's walking by the house.
Oh.
Or if, like, a bird chirps. Like, everything that's not important, they're there.
Gotcha. Mine are crazy. They bark for everything. They're good security, though, so I can't blame them.
Yeah, mine's pretty terrifying, so I feel good.
That is good. Yeah, So my love of everything awful, I think, did stem from those wonderful books that I recommend. If you haven't read them, I don't care how old you are, you need to pick them up and read them.
You probably have to go onto Amazon because I lost my original copies and I could not find them anywhere, any bookstores, because these are so terrifying that they stopped making the original illustrations. It's the illustrations that really haunt your nightmares.
Oh, yeah. Good old Harold the Scarecrow.
My tattoo artist has Harold tattooed on his arm, like
that is
forearm.
Awesome. That is so cool. Is he the one who did your Gizmo?
My Gizmo, yeah.
We got to share that on Instagram too. He looks so good.
Thank you.
So I think my love stemmed from that, and then kind of on a not so great end, my mother, who made some questionable choices in her life, one day was on a gore website. I love you, Mom, but I don't know why you showed me this site. And
wait, how old were you?
Oh gosh, I was maybe in the 4th or 5th grade.
Oh no! Because I look at gory websites too, but for educational reasons.
Yes. I still do it, but when I was 10, 11, 12, in that age range, I did not need to be seeing rotten.com, which is no longer up.
Rotten.com.
Yes. And on Rotten, one of the very first things I saw, I don't know if it's real, I hope it's not real, but it was a man eating a baby.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I think, and I wasn't disgusted by it, I wasn't frightened by it, I was super interested on what makes someone do that? What makes someone even take a picture of that? And from there, it just blossomed into this love of all things horrible that maybe are a little questionable how much I love them, but I can't stop myself. I'm just wanting to know more about it and what goes on in these people's minds and all that.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure a lot of other podcasts that cover the same topics explain it the same way, but it's not that, for me at least, it's not that, I love the act, torture, somebody suffering. It's more the psychology behind it, what makes somebody do that? What makes somebody,
want to drive them to kill someone and take someone from the planet, and it's just crazy. I would never willingly be oh, that man's eating a baby, cool, that's awful. But it's just the psychology of what the fuck is wrong with you that really just draws me to it.
And definitely not something you see every day.
No.
Yeah. We're interested in the things that we don't know, naturally as humans. We should be curious creatures.
Yeah. I always tell my husband, Matt, I'm if I wasn't a dog groomer, I would probably be going to school for autopsy. Ooh. I would love to just get in there and see how the body works and how, bullets affect different organs and all that stuff. It's so interesting.
I used to, and then I took anatomy in high school thinking, oh, this will be a good segue. If I like this, then I can do anything. Oh, I hated it. I hated it so much. I like BS more than anything in that class. Sorry, Miss Desire.
She's going to hear this and be really? Are you serious?
No, she knew. But yeah. Oh, also, I was saying my dad's a police officer, and just hearing some of his stories, he's seen, I don't even know how, he says it's different. So we go hunting. We're Texas. We're from Texas. I am Texas.
I am Texas.
Yeah. So, naturally we'd go hunting and I could skin my own deer. I can do whatever. But he'd always say, that's different than saying, a human.
Yeah.
He's seen some insane stuff, whether it be car wrecks where the person flips and their body has been dragged across the ground. Mm-hmm. He's seen, suicides. He's seen, murders even, one which he's if anybody wants to solve this cold case for me, that'd be great. I'll give you more details on that next time. But yeah, just hearing those stories, and he's it's completely different, and that I don't know. It's just interesting also how somebody can be in that line of work and come home and
put a smile on their face and be with their kids.
He wasn't a smiley guy. Maybe that's why he yelled at me all the time. This is starting to make sense now. But he's still, functioning human being for the most part.
Yeah, no, I can't even imagine all the trauma, all those people in that line of work, doctors and nurses. And, and no, it's just insane. And I give great kudos to all those people because that is a tough line of work.
Yeah, and then, I'm really interested in funerals also, like the embalming process. And I mean, those people make bank. Like the funeral director in my hometown is always saying, like, I love when, like, Mexicans die. And that sounds so horrible, like, taken out of context. But because we're, like, culturally ritualistic, so we
go all out.
Like, the fanciest of everything. But just that whole process in general, and my own experience is having to, you know, coordinate a funeral is, he was so good at it, too. Like, he was just dealing with people and their emotions, I think, is such a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So, and that's, you know, all that we're interested in that we cover, like the macabre, like death and the taboo, things that you don't normally hear about or talk about, or shouldn't bring up in lunch meetings. I don't. Just complete full disclosure. This is my secret life. Nobody from 9 to 5 knows what I do. Like, I'm sure they have, like, an idea, because I'm always, like, kind of talking about it on long road trips, but...
Just a little sprinkle.
Yeah, just to see what's up. Like, that's how I feel out people. Oh, did you hear about this murder that happened? And if they're like, oh, and I'm like, all right, cool. Well, let's just not talk then.
Yeah, no, Matt, I always read something awful, and I'm like, hey, babe, listen to this. And he's like, I don't want to listen. No, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, hey, look at this. I don't want to look at that. I'm like, you party pooper. So then I text my mom, and, you know, that's how that goes. But
yeah, like, it's the inevitable. Like, that's the one thing we all have in common.
Yes.
Which gives me chills. I'm terrified to death. This is why I talk about it. I learn about the things that I'm scared of.
Unfortunately, with death, we don't know what happens, so it's always a mystery.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't like not knowing things either. So that adds to my, like, anxiety of, oh my God, where
and I'm not
am I
helping.
Go? Oh no, it's okay. I think about this probably like 5 times a day.
It's only natural, I think. Oh man,
it's only the 4th time today, so I'm still due one.
You got one more.
One more. Gosh, there was something else I was gonna mention. Oh yeah, like on that note, there's a whole series on, I forgot what network it is, but it's a show all about Christmas crimes.
That is so bad.
And that's what we watched for Christmas.
I gotta party with you guys, man.
Yeah, we watched El Camino Christmas on Netflix. Please watch that. It's so good. A wholesome family movie. And then we watched the Crimes on Christmas, or whatever it's called.
That's crazy.
So that's where it started. That's how I'm here.
My mom's favorite thing is to watch, like, those crazy extensive surgery shows.
Like the plastic surgery ones?
That, and then, like trauma in the ER, and they're talking about... I think that's where my love of everything stems to. And I try to watch that here at home, and my husband's, like, gagging every 2 seconds. I even tried to watch Pimple Popper, and he was just...
Oh, I love Pimple
He was being so dramatic. I'm like, it's a zit! He's like, that's disgusting, it looks like mashed potatoes!
Oh my God, that is really gross, actually. No, I guess I'm very blessed. The only thing I can't discuss with Gabriel is, like, ghost. It's just, so, full disclosure, I'm pretty spiritual. I, like, believe in God, but my husband's an atheist. But he's a big believer in aliens.
That's so weird.
I don't know, to me, I think maybe he thinks, like, aliens created us. That's, I don't know. Being raised Catholic really messes with you sometimes. But, sorry, babe. Just, like, dishing out all your dirty laundry out here.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, but ghost, yeah, he's like, that's not real. Like, ghosts aren't real. I'm like, oh, check out this haunted place. Let's go check this out. And he's
Nothing's
like,
gonna happen.
No, ghosts aren't real. I'm like, why? Or, what drives me crazy is watching scary movies. And he wants to poke holes in everything. I'm like, just let people enjoy things. Let me be scared of this ghost. So
my thing with scary movies is I get, like, a little jump scare, and then I'm not scared. I'm not one of those people that has to turn on the lights afterwards, and I hate that because I just want to be scared. And on the flip side, Matt is terrified, so he's got to turn on the lights. He's got to watch, like, Animal Planet, Blue Planet, something like that to, like, ease his nerves. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to bed.
That's so funny. So he won't be watching scary stories until in the dark?
He will, but then he'll have to, like, stay awake for, like, an hour or two and, like, play some video games afterwards or something to ease himself. So He's my big baby.
Oh, that's kind of cute, though. No, none of that here.
So you ready to get onto our stories?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So I actually made a last-minute decision.
Wait, which story are you doing?
I'll tell you right now. Once you're all locked
I don't
in.
like surprises. I must know everything.
This is why I changed it last minute, because our dry run was rough, so I had to get something new in here.
Okay, so I can still do the...
Yeah, no, you can still do yours.
Okay.
I last minute changed my story like I said previously, and I just felt that my story wasn't a good introduction into the podcast. I felt like we needed something a little more interesting, because
it was pretty interesting.
I thought it was a little boring, so...
All right. Okay. We'll save it. We definitely need to save it later.
No, I'm definitely saving it for a backup, but I wanted something that I was just drawn to since the idea of starting the podcast.
It's a good Easter topic. Maybe Easter.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
Get those holy holidays rolling.
Okay, so I'm excited to tell you that my first story is about spontaneous human combustion.
Yes.
So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to kind of tell you some accounts of cases, a little bit of history, and then I'm going to get kind of into the science of it.
Yes.
So the first reported case of spontaneous human combustion dates back to 1641. And it was an Italian knight named Polonius Vorst... Oh my gosh, I've been drinking. Polonius Vorstuius.
I think it's just Italian. I don't think it's the beer or the
Smirnoffs. He died after drinking 2 ladles of wine. He began vomiting fire and caught a flame and burned to death.
Vomiting fire?
Yeah, so I don't...
It sounds like an anti-drinking campaign.
Right? That is not for this podcast. In 1731, Countess Cornelia Bandi of Cesena, Italy, after dinner one evening, said she felt ill. She went to her bed, and her maid found her in the next morning burned to a pile of ash with only her legs intact.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then in the 1800s, Pierre-Ami Lier wrote an essay which roughly translates to the Essay on the Human Combustion produced by a long abuse of spirituous liquors. This essay sparked the theory that alcohol was the cause of spontaneous human combustion. And I had to translate that roughly because there was no way I was going to be able to say that in Italian. Just no way.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, and Charles Dickens even wrote about spontaneous human combustion in 1853 in his novel Bleak House. And in that novel, the minor character Crook, a cheating merchant with a love for gin, spontaneously catches on fire and burns to death. And it wasn't long before other authors, notably Mark Twain and Herman Melville, jumped on the bandwagon and began to write spontaneous combustion stories as well. They faced a ton of backlash by locals because a lot of people believed it was true, but fans defended them by pointing to a long list of reported cases. And it is estimated that there was about 200 cases of spontaneous human combustion.
Ever? Or like
recorded.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that would be
like,
crazy in a year.
Give me something else to worry about in my daily life.
All right, so here we go. On July 2nd, 1951, at about 8 a.m., Mary Hardy Resser's landlady, Pansy Carpenter, knocked on Resser's door to deliver a telegram. Touching the door, she found that the metal knob was uncomfortably warm to the touch and called the police. And she also had smelled like a weird odor. Police and fire authorities carefully entered the apartment, and upon entering the home, they found Resser's remains completely burned into ash, along with the ashy remains of the chair on which she sat. And the chair had burned down to expose the coils, but everything else around her was untouched.
Wait, and this was a female, right?
This was a female. Her name was Mary Resser.
I feel like I remember reading about an elderly man, which I don't know if you'll talk about later.
I will actually get to him, yeah.
Yeah, there's only 200, surely.
I had to kind of pick the good ones.
Not that she's going to go through each 200.
No,
but,
no.
You know.
I wouldn't do that to you guys. And part of her left leg and her foot, which was still wearing a slipper, and her backbone remained. They also believe that they found her skull, and the plastic on the light switches in the room had softened and lost their shape, but they hadn't completely melted. So the room definitely felt hot, and there was a huge heat in there, but a lot of stuff was left untouched. And it's believed that Reser's skull had survived and was found among the ashes, but it had shrunken to the size of a teacup. The extent of this shrinkage was enough to be remarked on by multiple official investigators. And I guess shrunken skulls are claimed to be a regular feature of spontaneous human combustion, but it was later thought to actually be a part of her vertebrae because it's extremely hard, if not impossible, to shrink a human skull.
That's interesting. Well, you're going to cover the science later, right?
Yeah, I'll get into it a little bit. On July 7th, 1951, St. Petersburg Police Chief J.R. Reacher sent a box of evidence from the scene to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. He included glass fragments found in the ashes, 6 small objects thought to be teeth, a section of the carpet, and the surviving shoe that was on her foot that they had found at the scene. And even though the body was almost totally cremated, the room in which it occurred showed little evidence of the fire, and because of the oddity of her case, she became known as the Cinder Lady. So she is like one of the very big heavy hitters. Everyone knows about the Cinder Lady.
Mm-hmm. And what year was this?
This was 1951.
Oh, wow.
And the FBI...
Not even 100 years ago.
No, not even 100 years ago. And the FBI declared that Rezer had died of the Wick effect. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But she was a known user of sleeping pills, and the FBI hypothesized that she had fallen unconscious while smoking and set fire to her night clothes. And one of the FBI's agents wrote in his report that once the body starts to burn, there's enough fat and other inflammable substances to permit varying amounts of destruction to take place. Sometimes this destruction by burning will progress to a degree which results in almost complete combustion of the body. And you can find her case, like her FBI case file online, and you can find photos of her apartment and like her foot just there.
Oh, wow.
And
they did not hold anything.
No, they did not. And I will be sure to link that to our website so you guys can kind of dig around that and look at our FBI files if you want to. They're a little hard to read, but they're interesting. Okay, so our next account is on November 6th, 1964. Helen Conway of Pennsylvania was babysitting her grandchildren. A neighbor happened to be walking past her home and spotted a huge flame through the window. When the fire department arrived, they were shocked to find half of her body incinerated, but her lower legs, feet, and toes intact. Neighbors told authorities that Miss Conway was a heavy smoker, and friends had also mentioned that prior to this incident, both her furniture and house robes had many cigarette burns. So she was pretty careless with her cigarettes. Investigators soon found that despite her level of carelessness as she smoked, it was impossible to cremate a human from a cigarette, since cremations normally take place at around 1400 to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. And for my non-Americans, that's 760 degrees Celsius to 982 degrees Celsius. But I've also read reports that bodies don't burn until 3000 degrees. So there's just different varying temperatures of how far the body burns.
Well, that's really good to know, because last night I was taking a bubble bath and I had to Google how hot is too hot. And I really doubt it was anywhere up there.
No, of course not.
I mean, I felt a little woozy after, so.
You were nice and warm. And fire investigators reconstructed the incident and found that Miss Conway was alive at around 8:42 a.m. Basically, the fire ignited at her ass and burned straight upwards and was fed by the fat in her torso. Her granddaughter had made the fire alarm call within 3 minutes of leaving Helen's house. Sorry about the page. Oh no, I stapled the wrong page.
Oh no. You had the Leslie Knope moment.
I did. I just saw that episode too. Well, how did I fuck that up? Okay, let's go back. Her granddaughter had made the fire call within 3 minutes of leaving Helen Conway's house, and firemen arrived to find her remains at 8:48 a.m., so it took approximately 6 minutes for Conway to burn to death while sitting in her chair. And Joe Nickel, one of the fire investigators, stated that the fire needed to be incredibly intense, similar to a grease fire in a kitchen. An assistant chief, while searching through the dense smoke for Conway, sank his hand into something thick, yellow, and greasy, which ended up being remains of Helen.
Oh. Sorry, I was like, the thought of touching, like, body fat.
Yeah, like just a melted human. I couldn't even... Oh, so gross. And I can't even imagine the smell. Like,
yeah, that's something I hear. The smell is what sets people off. Like, it's a smell, like, burning flesh is a smell like no other.
Yeah, like when I used to burn my hair in high school with the straightener, that smelled awful.
Just like hair alone.
Ugh. So I can't even imagine a body. No, thank you. On December 4th in 1966, friends visiting John Irving Bentley's home wished him good night as they left at around 9 p.m. The following morning, a meter reader named Don Gosnell went to the basement to check the meter. While in the basement, Gosnell noticed a strange smell and a light blue smoke. The smoke was somewhat sweet, like starting up a new oil-burning central heating system. Which, I mean, he was a meter reader, so of course he's going to have some weird terminology in here. And on the ground was a neat pile of ash about 35 centimeters in height. The floor underneath the ash was unmarked, and above the ash was a foot-long square in the floorboard. Intrigued, he went upstairs to investigate. The bedroom was smoky, and in the bathroom he found Bentley's cremated remains. All that was left was the lower half of his right leg, a slipper still on it. The rest of his body had been reduced to a pile of ash in the basement below, which were the ashes he had found. And his walker lay by the hole in the ground, and the rubber tips were still intact, and the nearby tub was barely scorched. Gosnell ran from the building to get help, and he reached one of his coworkers, screaming, "Dr. Bentley's burned up." And he was so terrified that he looked as white as a sheet.
Okay, I think that's the one I was thinking of, like the elderly man.
Poor doctor. And to have a doctor die like that, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
On September 13th, 1960... this one's really fucked up.
Say it.
On September 13th, 1967, emergency services were called when a concerned citizen walking to work noticed a bright light coming from inside a seemingly abandoned home in South London. Arriving at approximately 5:24 a.m., the fire department discovered the burning body of Robert Francis Bailey, a local homeless alcoholic. The responding firefighters reported that as they entered the building, Bailey was lying on the bottom of the stairs, half turned on his left side with his knees drawn up like he was in a fetal position. Bailey was conscious when he began to burn.
Wait, I mean, because wouldn't all the others be conscious also, or... like they fell asleep, or...
We'll get into it, but this is one of the very few cases where they say that the person was conscious.
And then when they found him, he was very much not.
He was, he was done for when they found him. So evidence suggests that he had been convulsing in agony as the fire consumed him. Due to the pain he had experienced, he had bitten into a solid mahogany post on the stairs, and his teeth were embedded so deeply into the wood that his mouth had to be pried open by the police department to remove his body.
So he was still biting onto the wood.
Yeah. I can't... Oh, my gosh.
I mean, this was in London. Maybe they don't have stop, drop, and roll. Like, I would probably try that method, but if your body is burning, I guess there's not much you can do.
Well, we're going to get into why he couldn't stop, drop, and roll right now.
Okay, good.
There was a 4-inch slit in his stomach with a blue flame that was bursting from within the slit like a blowtorch.
What the hell?
He was burning from the inside out.
What?
So to extinguish the flame completely, the hose had to be placed within the slit.
Oh my god, I did not read this before.
So no, he could not stop, drop, and roll.
Oh my gosh, inside?
Fire damage to the property itself was minimal, and the fire damage was on the floor directly below where he had been burning. Aside from the clothing on his torso where the fire had originated, the rest of the clothing on his body was intact and unaffected by the fire. Bailey's original cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation due to inhalation of the fire, but after reviewing the case further, his death was deemed to have been due to unknown causes.
See, that's the thing. When it comes with fire, I feel like when they can't explain, or when it's something really crazy like that, it's like, oh...
the smoke.
Or it's what did you just say? Deemed...
asphyxiation.
Or deemed unexplained or unsolvable. What? Damn it, you
unknown.
Just said
unknown.
Wow, unknown. They're just like, we don't know. like, yeah, you can write self-combusted.
Yeah. Well, they were unwilling to recognize it as a reason for his death, so investigators decided that Bailey's alcoholism was the probable contributor to the fire.
So, sorry, as I'm drinking my beer, I'm like, no, hold up. Alcohol set this poor man on fire on the inside?
Apparently. So, on the night of November 12th, 1974, Jack Angel fell asleep in his camper at a motel parking lot somewhere in Savannah, Georgia. Angel slept for 4 days, which I wish I could still do.
I could probably do it, not gonna lie.
And when he awoke, his skin was covered in burns. The burns covered his arms, his wrist, his back, and even burned a hole from the inside out on his chest. Looking around, he found no evidence of a fire, and nothing in his mobile home was burnt. Even the clothes he was wearing appeared to be fine. Terrified, he ran to a nearby hotel and collapsed. Days later, Angel woke up in a hospital, and doctors had no idea and no answers for Jack, other than that burning appeared to start in his left arm. Sorry, you can probably hear my dog.
I mean, your dog is probably listening to us, or can hear us, and thinking, what the fuck?
She's freaking out.
Yeah, your dog is probably sensing my fear and, like, stress. Like, something's happening in there. I must go save them.
Oh.
I know. Now that makes me really sad. As if I wasn't already from all of this self-combustion.
In 1975, Angel claimed he had scolded himself while trying to change the water pressure of his mobile home. So he completely just disregarded that it was spontaneous human combustion and said that he did it himself, trying to fix the water pressure.
Also, if you survive from that, how do you explain it also? If there really no medical I'm sure, well, yeah, there's medical terms for it, I would think.
But there's no...
I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't.
But there was no true cause or true answers, and I think maybe either from backlash or he was trying to get, like, some insurance claim or something like that, he just backtracked completely. So, yeah. Okay, so now to break down kind of like a little bit of the science of spontaneous human combustion. Most believe that it comes from the wick effect, which I had mentioned earlier, and it is the name given to the partial destruction of a human body by fire. It is suggested that a small external flame source, such as a burning cigarette, chars the clothing of the victim, and this burn breaks the skin and the wound begins to release fat. When the clothing of the victim soaks up the melted human fat, it acts like a wick of a candle. The continuous supply of the fat to the wick keeps the flame burning at an astonishingly high temperature. It burns until there is nothing left to burn, and the blaze extinguishes. And because fires tend to burn upwards, they don't really move back and forth unless they have like some type of wind current or something to make it move. It kind of just stays in one spot, you know?
Yeah.
Like when you light a candle, it just stays right on the wick. So that kind of explains how most of the room doesn't burn up. There's also a rare medical condition called Stevens-Johnson syndrome that in extreme cases may be mistaken for a case of an aborted spontaneous combustion. Stevens-Johnson syndrome is a rare serious disorder of your skin and mucous membrane. It's usually due to the reaction of a medication or an infection, and often it begins with flu-like symptoms followed by painful red or purple rashes that spread and blister. And then the top layer of the affected skin dies, sheds, and then heals. And if it's left untreated, it can actually kill you. So it kind of almost mimics the look of a burn.
Oh, I see. I was like, wait, I don't hear any fire.
Yeah. So
okay. That makes sense.
Kind of explains Jack Angel's case where, you know, he woke up one morning, maybe he was feeling a little sick and doesn't remember, but it kind of explains why he might have woken up with all these weird burns on him. And being, you know, human combustion, you think someone's just going to go up in flames for no reason at all, just walking down the street. I always thought when I was little, I was just one day going to burst.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that because I'm like, wow, I've thought about this as I was younger before. Like, is it just going to happen? Can it just happen?
And I'm going to be walking down the street and then I just go up, you know? So it's very highly unlikely that someone would just burst into like a giant flame for no reason at all. Most victims are actually elderly, and there's never a witness, which goes hand in hand with the fact that it's always an accident. So they could either have taken too many sleeping pills and they just got knocked out and they were smoking a cigarette, or they couldn't get up, like the doctor in the case. Maybe he fell and he had like a lighter or something in his hand and he just went up and he couldn't get up. So it's not just that you burst into flames. There's always some other back source that causes it.
And maybe back in the cases when it was way, way back in the day, like the 1600s, alcohol was associated. Perhaps. I don't know if it said, I can't recall if they said where it was, like in a tavern or anything like that. But, I mean, those places were lit by candles.
Yeah, there was
they weren't smoking.
There was no fire regulations back then, so, yeah.
They could have just had a cut. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like a cut on their body, and then boom.
They caught in flames. And, like, back in the day when they put those, I always saw it in Pirates of the Caribbean. I know that's a ridiculous reference, but that little thing they would put in the bed with, like, the hot coals to make the bed warm.
Yeah, that always confused me. I'm like, is that safe?
Like, how do you not go up in flames? It just makes me think maybe the second story, the second incident I read to you, something like that definitely could have been the cause of her death, burning and stuff. So there's definitely things that can explain it. You're not just going to go up into a giant fireball, so...
Well, that makes me feel so much better.
So
because till this day, I was thinking it might just happen.
Yeah, no, just don't fall asleep with a cigarette in your hand, or with matches, or a joint. I don't know, whatever toots your horn, but
whatever lights your fire.
Yes, exactly.
Geez, I was gonna say something that's what they should put on anti-smoking campaigns.
Can cause spontaneous human combustion. That would scare me.
As a child, I was already terrified as a child. Like, that would send me, like, away from anything cigarette related.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, all they had to tell me really was it causes wrinkles. So. But for all the little, like, bastards in the class, I'm pretty sure, like, hey, kid, you might blow up. Like, that would probably do it.
Well, I'm sure there's one that's like, oh, cool. But there's always one.
There's always one. Why do I feel like that would have been my husband? So, wow. Well, now I do feel better that you put the science behind it. And we know the causes.
Yay.
We are all just walking candlesticks.
Isn't that crazy?
That's what I learned.
And I'm over here collecting all these candles, and I'm just picturing, like, all these little humans, like...
I mean, yeah, I have tons of candles everywhere also. Love candles, but... Ooh.
Now I'm kind of rethinking my love for candles.
I'm still going to do it. They smell too good. All right, well, thank you for that. That was awesome. I'm kind of glad that you surprised me with the story. Yeah. Because I was very surprised.
I'm glad you liked it, because after our dry run, full disclosure, that was awful.
It wasn't pretty good. I was impressed.
I definitely wanted to kind of switch it up on you, so.
I'm glad you did. It was a nice surprise.
Awesome.
Well, now you're just going to hear the same old boring story I was telling.
I've only heard, like, the first 2 sentences, so.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Okay, so mine is a little bit more cheerful. At first, we were going to team up and write about saints. And I'm not, even though I mentioned that I am, like, spiritual in a way, I'm not religious. So I don't know a lot about saints. Like, you're listening to a person who got kicked out of Catholic school, like the after school. I was the one that argued about things, so I really didn't learn a lot. So I'm not familiar with saints, unless they're folklore saints, or folk saints, and that's what we're going to talk about right now.
And I'm excited because I know nothing about folklore saints, so I can't wait.
Well, I was going to go all in and do Santa Muerte, but that's going to take a while because there's just so much going on with her. As I called her before, like, la mera mera, but she's like la mera huera. And if you are a gringo, that means she's a bad bitch. Like, so bad, she's going to need a few episodes. So we're going to save that for later. Actually, side note, when I was going to see my new therapist, I saw like a botanica, which I'll talk about in a second, for Santa Muerte, like right next door.
That is awesome.
I'm like, okay, I'm either in the right place or I'm not in the right place.
Like, I need to get out of here, or these are my people.
Or this was meant to be. But anyways, so what I'm going to cover is the Narco Saint. So a little background. A few months ago, I like to go into like the botanicas, or I like to call them herberias, which they're just retail stores that sell folk medicine, religious candles, statuary, anything along the lines of alternative medicine or like spiritual practices. Which I know I'm kind of talking about it like it's no big deal. Like, I just one day, doing my everyday shopping. So yeah, that was in Austin, and I was noticing these little porcelain busts of this suave-looking man with a mustache.
Like a Flynn Rider from Tangled? Is that what we're talking about here?
No. Oh. I'd probably buy it if it did look like him. That is my favorite prince, but...
He's a beautiful creature.
He is, and he's funny. Like, if you're funny, like, I'm all yours. But, no, he's more like a Gone with the Wind, because he has a little mustache.
Gotcha.
What's his name?
Patrick. Is it Patrick Swayze? No. Oh my goodness.
And Gone with the Wind. Oh, jeez. I know it's in here. It's in my notes because I'm like, that's exactly who he looks like, but no. Anyways, I'll stumble upon it. But he's a suave-looking character. So I noticed amongst like all these saints that I kind of recognized, there was this, the man with the mustache. You're Googling it.
I am Googling it right now.
What's his name? It's not Richard Gere either, because I thought about that.
There's a Clark Gable.
Clark Gable! That's what I was thinking of.
Well, I don't know where the hell I got Patrick Swayze from.
So I was just curious, I'm like, who? And I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, who's that man? And she's like, oh, that's the Narco Saint. I'm like, oh, they have a saint for everything. So yeah, I started looking more into it. And his name is Jesus Malverde. So if translated into English, that's literally Jesus Bad Green. So if you can't remember the Spanish or his actual name, just remember the English translation. But Jesus Malverde also he's also known as the Generous Bandit, the Angel of the Poor, is the unofficial patron saint of drug traffickers. And I say unofficial because there's no way in hell that the Catholic Church is going to recognize him.
So is he kind of like a Robin Hood, per se?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you can kind of get that by his name, Generous Bandit. So he was born Jesus Juarez Mazo, and I will touch on that, like how he got those nicknames. He was born Jesus Juarez Mazo in Sinaloa, which is like the west coast of Mexico, kind of along the Gulf of California. And if you're familiar with Sinaloa, in the news it's portrayed as this gang-ridden area of Mexico.
Mexico's always referred to as gang-ridden.
Yeah, Mexico really does have a bad rap because it's really in those concentrated areas where drug trafficking is huge. I travel to Mexico City. I've only been like a handful of times, and people always ask me, and they're like, aren't you scared? I'm like, well, when I go, I'm not looking for drugs.
Yeah.
And when people go, they're like, oh, I'm a little nervous. I'm like, well, are you going to go do drugs? And they're like, what? They're like, no, of course not. I'm like, well, then you have nothing to be worried about.
Exactly. It's such there's such beautiful places in Mexico.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But Sinaloa is kind of one of the areas.
A little rough. It's a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, I personally haven't been, but that's when I hear about it, it's because of, drug trafficking. But that's where he originated and said to be born in 1870. And I don't say he was, because all of this is urban legend. It's all folklore. There are no real accounts of him even existing, which is, to me, crazy. It's all word of mouth. So back in the 1870s, he grew up under the rule of the Mexican dictator Diaz, whose local supporter was Francisco Cañedo, who ran Sinaloa. So that's important because it was, of course, when you have a dictator, you have the super poor and then you have the super rich. So Malverde was known to steal from the super rich and give to the poor. And he became a bandit after the death of his parents, which in return made him live in poverty.
Did they say how his parents died? Is there any record of if they even existed?
Well, there's really no record of if he even existed.
Yeah.
So the parents, like, I didn't even, like, look
something
into...
tragic. I'm sure something tragic.
Yeah, like, according to legend, his parents died, and then he became poor, so he had to kind of live this rock and roll lifestyle to support himself.
Gotcha.
So in my notes I do say it was known as a Robin Hood character, and that's why the poor, or I say poor, like the people like who find themselves feeling poor are so attracted to him. But of course, along with the rock and roll lifestyle is the aftermath. If you go higher. What is it? Higher you rise. That whatever. Scratch that.
No, the bigger you are, the harder you fall, I think is what you were trying to say. Yeah.
Point is, he fell. So according to legend, he was hanged for his sins of stealing from the rich. But he then started working miracles from the grave, and this is where things start getting interesting. A few sources, such as the National Geographic, say he was hanged. Others say he was betrayed by a friend, and shot by the police. So that's when I say there are no records. There are really no records. These are all just like
word of mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Either way, he died. Whichever way he was killed, his body was denied a proper burial. So they're like, you know what, this poor criminal isn't getting a proper burial. They just threw his body out to rot.
Well, if he's real, he ain't never gonna rest, and you're gonna see him again.
Exactly, but not in the haunted way, as you would think, in the more gracious way of let me give you some miracles.
Interesting.
I know. I need some more of those. Allegedly, passerbys began to cover the body with pebbles. Nobody wants to see that. But those who paid their respects in that way received favors and miracles from Malverde.
I'm going to need to keep a pocket full of pebbles just in case.
You never know, and you might stumble upon a... Jeez. And then people are going to be like, why is that girl throwing stones?
What is that noise?
Yeah, probably not the best idea, but all for the miracles. We need some miracles in our lives. But, so this happened in the 1800s, late 1800s, but it wasn't until almost a century later, in 1970, that his cult... So when I was reading, a lot of this is cult. Like, they refer to his followers as cults. And for some weird reason, when I'm talking about these folk saints, I hesitate to calling them cults. Because when I think of cults, I think of, like, you have this one leader, and you're just so brainwashed by them, by what they say and what they do. And I know I looked up the definition, and it kind of fit, but in my mind, there's just this disconnect, because this isn't a real person.
Yeah.
This isn't somebody that you're listening to and worshiping, like, their sermons and actively participating with. Like, this is
more like looking up to them in a way, or...
This is more like... more religious in a sense. Like,
gotcha.
You're putting your faith into something completely unknown. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if it's like a cult, because most cults have their leaders.
Yeah. And with that logic, then most religions would be considered cults.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
And we don't want to go that route, because we're going to upset a lot of people.
We don't want to dive into that
I mean, like the 10 people listening to us, but...
Hi, Mom.
Dad. No, my dad wouldn't even be listening to this.
I hope my dad doesn't listen to this. I was talking about how he yelled at me and didn't smile. So it wasn't until the 70s that a street vendor called by the name of Eligio Gonzalez began praying to him. So I didn't find how he even found out about him. So Gonzalez had been working as a driver in 1976 when he was knifed and shot in a holdup and left for dead.
Ugh.
So much like, just kind of thrown out there and left, much like Malverde.
Yeah.
So he began praying to Malverde, whose only monument at the time was a pile of rocks where his grave was said to be, promising to erect a proper shrine in Malverde's honor if the saintly bandit saved his life. So let me say that again. So Gonzalez was left dead, but he began praying to Malverde, who didn't have a proper shrine or even a burial. It was just a pile of rocks where he's said to have been buried. So he promised Malverde to erect a proper shrine in his honor if he saved his life. And he did.
He came through.
So, yeah, he did. He survived, and Gonzalez kept his word. So the twister, and so like I said, still, like, the twister in all of this is we don't really know if he lived, if he was a real person. But this person, in his time of near death,
in his time of need,
thought to have, make this promise to him. So now today, the official Malverde shrine is located in Colican, the capital of Sinaloa, which I feel like I might not have properly said, but which is rightly so. I mean, that's where he was said to be born and said to have lived his life. So the shrine today is a makeshift cinder block temple directly in front of the Sinaloa State Government Office Complex, which I think is pretty metal. It's like sticking
I'm
it
still
to the
here,
man.
yeah.
And its green walls are covered inside and out with testimonials left by the faithful.
Oh.
Yeah, so people will go in and say, Malverde did this for me. Thank you. So the plaster bust is enshrined in a glass case, surrounded by dozens of flower bouquets, mostly plastic, and just little offerings that people come and bring Malverde as gifts.
That would be so neat to visit and just read what people wrote and put their faith into. Yeah,
there is this there's this YouTube video that I was watching of an older gentleman. I guess he travels to various places and kind of does a little documentary on it, and he's in the shrine, and you can see that it's small and that people have made it with what they have.
Yeah.
Because once again, this is a lower income community, and not having much, they're able to give what they could.
Yeah.
And that reflects on how much faith that they have in Malverde.
And I think that makes it so much more, I guess, spiritual, because they're giving everything, the last thing, like, what they have to him.
Exactly.
Which I think gives it so much more of a force.
Yeah, and that's why he has, such a big, and it reflects the following he has. So many accompanying photographs that people leave and engraved plaques feature the images of the marijuana plant or a goat horn, which is an AK-47 rifle.
Oh my gosh.
Which is very aligned, with drug trafficking.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that I forgot to mention earlier. I was in these herverias and looking at the bust or the little replicas of Malverde. He always had like a weed plant. So that's why I was like, oh,
who are you?
Who are you? Yeah, Mr. Street Doctor, street pharmacist. So that caught my attention. But every year on the anniversary of his death, a large party is held in Malverde's shrine. The original shrine was the one that was in the 1970s that Gonzalez had erected and was actually built over amid much controversy, and a new shrine was built on nearby land. So the original site became a parking lot, which kind of sucks.
That's crappy.
Yeah, but I mean, they still have one, like an official one nearby. Mm-hmm. So his influence even crossed the border. It's not just in Sinaloa. Robert Almonte, who's a law enforcement consultant, has extensively researched the Narco Saint, as he is now known for, and he gives presentations to law enforcement to teach the significance of Narco Saints.
Oh,
yeah, like what a cool job! Like, how long do I have to do this podcast before I get to go, like, lecture the police about my, like, spooky things? Which I find fascinating. So he was a former U.S. Marshal for the Western District of Texas and he's a retired deputy chief with the El Paso Police Department. He started researching saints revered by Mexican drug traffickers while working as a police narcotics officer in the 1980s. So if you see, like, videos, like news videos of him talking, he discusses, like, how being able to notice these identifiers can save a policeman's life or like, lead them to...
It gives them the upper hand.
Yeah, like, if you have a raid in a house, you see a big shrine dedicated to either Santa Muerte or Malverde, chances are you're going to find drugs.
Yeah.
So those are, like, the key signifiers. And even my mom would say, if you see somebody with a tattoo, like Santa Muerte or anything like that, then they're probably drug affiliated. Mm-hmm. Which I'm like, Mom, it's like the Grim Reaper.
He's everywhere.
Like, calm down. But like I said, that's a whole huge area.
Yeah.
But drug traffickers adopted Malverde because they see themselves in the good-hearted bandit, according to Almonte. Like, Mexican cartels acknowledge that they're doing bad, but more importantly, they're doing a bad thing for the right reasons.
So, do you know if, like, Pablo Escobar or anything like that had a thing for him, or do you know? Because he was very much Robin Hood-esque into giving back to the lower income and such.
Well, that's really interesting. I didn't find anything on Escobar because he was in Sinaloa.
Yeah.
However, my next line talks about Malverde's role in El Chapo's.
He was my next.
Yeah, and his trial even. So Malverde made it big time in the news whenever Joaquin Chapo Guzman was on trial. So potential jurors were asked the question, "Are you familiar with Jesus Malverde?" There was a bit of a fear that jurors had whenever asking this question because they didn't want the people on trial, or not on trial, the people in the jury to see El Chapo as a similar figure as Malverde. And El Monte kind of had that prediction as well. He predicted that the defense was going to say, yeah, Guzman did it. He did a bad thing, but he did it for the right reasons, just like Jesus Malverde. I really didn't dig into the trial because I feel like that would have made this
a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
And start,
You would have been like, okay, lady, I only have like a 30-minute commute, and this has been going on for 2 hours.
Do you want to give the listeners a little synopsis of who El Chapo is real quickly for those that don't know? Just like a quick little tidbit.
Pull over and Google that shit. No, I'm just kidding. No. Big time drug cartel. Like, yes. He was like the head honcho, like our modern day Pablo Escobar. Yeah. This man like escaped from prison several times. Like, he ran the area because he could just pay the police off, and that's what he did. But
he's a whole rabbit hole, but
but what you see, like hung out with like soap opera stars, even actors. That one actor who went down to interview him.
Oh my gosh, there was an actress too.
Yeah, she was this like novela.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to look it up. Let me see. I'll let you keep going, and then I'll plop in with it. So yeah, like in these kind of crime-ridden, poorer areas, that's what people have. Like, their economy isn't built to like maintain a proper job because their resources have been like demolished and extinguished. So there's not much opportunity there. So that's why they find this hero in Malverde. Not to get like all preachy and all my soapbox. Sean Penn.
Yeah, Sean Penn, and the actress was
Kate del Castillo. Kate del Castillo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did they go interview him, or did they just go like hang out?
Sean Penn went to go interview him, and I think Kate ended up meeting him a couple times, and they kind of talked back and forth a little bit. Because I know she had some drama with her too. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know there were some issues there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But going back to El Chapo, for a lot of people in Sinaloa, Mexico, Chapo Guzman is their hero, just like Malverde was, or is still. They love Chapo more than they love the Mexican government, according to Almonte. So Almonte's fears did not come into fruition because last February, El Chapo was found guilty of all of his crimes. About 2 to 3 weeks ago, prosecutors submitted a note for him to receive life in prison. So,
if he doesn't get out himself again.
Exactly. If he doesn't dig another hole, we won't be seeing him anytime soon. But, history often repeats itself. So I wonder in 50 years, or maybe longer, maybe in the next century, we'll find busts of El Chapo and Herverias.
Right. That would be quite interesting to see.
I'm like envisioning it now.
I am too, and I do not.
That serious face.
Yeah, he's just like grumpy.
Just staring. At least Malverde kind of has like a soft, nice face to look at. So yeah, that's Malverde. So my next one is a lesser known folk saint, and the reason I say that is I mean lesser known as in I asked my mom, and she said she didn't know who that was.
He's less popular with your mother.
With my mom. Yeah, and once I go down to where the next one originated, then it might make sense. So the next one is Juan Soldado. Juan Castillo Morales, known by the name as Juan Soldado, was a convicted rapist and murderer who later became a folk saint.
How does that happen?
I will lead you to this journey. Lead you on this journey. Because at first when I was reading it, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no thank you.
So, his followers believe Soldado can help in matters of health, criminal problems, family matters, and crossing the U.S.-Mexico border.
What?
And other challenges in your daily life.
That's crazy.
So if you have any issues, just email me and I'll prescribe you a folk saint to worship. Because there's one for everything. So Castillo, or Soldado, was a private in the Mexican army stationed in Tijuana, where he was accused of raping and murdering Olga Camacho Martinez, an 8-year-old girl.
Oh, no.
Who went missing on February 13th, 1938. She went missing and her decapitated body was found shortly after. The girl's father, by some accounts, was involved in a labor dispute arising out of the closing of a local casino by President Cardenas. So that's important to pinpoint, to remember there.
Put a pin in it.
Yes, we'll come back. So Castillo was arrested and allegedly confessed. Other accounts claimed he maintained his innocence until his death. A crowd, perhaps led by the girl's parents and other connected with labor dispute, attempted to seize him while he was in custody, setting fire to the police station and the city hall, preventing firefighters from responding to these fires.
I probably would have done the same.
Yeah, local authorities turned him over to the army, which proceeded to sentence him to death. So you're probably thinking, like, what the fuck? Like, how did that escalate? So during this time, Tijuana was in a crisis. This was in 1938, the year Soldado, and I'm switching Castillo and Soldado, but I'll continue to call him Soldado from here because that's how he's known. So in 1938, Tijuana was in a crisis. The Americans who had once frequented the city's cantinas and casinos were no longer coming, thanks to the Prohibition end and a new casino ban. Mm-hmm. So prior to 1938, the city was booming. Americans were vacationing, having a good time because they couldn't get their booze on their own soil. So yeah, during all like this time of unrest, you know, people were experiencing mass deportation because the United States was like, hey, we got our shit together finally, like y'all can leave. So there was just bad blood in the water.
Sounds like current times.
And yeah, like reading this, I'm like, there's a lot of, like I said before, history repeats itself in a way. But during this time of civil unrest, you know, you believe you need a scapegoat. And this big figure in the community's daughter just was brutally murdered. So they need a guy. They need somebody to pit their anger towards, and that was Soldado.
Gotcha. So
he was executed by court-martial. He was condemned to death by ley de fuego, which is a cruel ritual that compelled him to run toward the border while being targeted by a firing squad.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, so that's pretty intense. So now you kind of see why he's the saint of immigrants crossing the border. Yeah. So before he could reach U.S. soil, he was fatally shot in the back. You know, how do you get away from that?
Yeah. You know, that kind of reminds me of that movie Apocalypto. Have you ever seen?
Yeah.
Where he's running from the arrows.
I don't think I've seen that movie straight through because I can't.
That is such a good movie.
It is. It's very intense.
But okay, I can see how they kind of made him for immigrants, like trying to get over the border. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's still a piece of shit, but I can see how that kind of transferred over. Yeah, and then we'll talk about, if he did it. oh, gotcha.
So that's why, kind of jumping forward, that's why He is known as a saint because he was wrongly accused, according to legend.
Okay.
Yeah, so, they needed a scapegoat. They needed a guy to blame. He was a private, like...
No one's gonna miss him.
But they're like, he's, like, on the bottom of the totem pole. Here's the guy. Which I'm sure there's more to the story.
Yeah, there always is.
Just like Malverde, weird shit started happening. So he was fatally shot in the back, and when sympathizers tried to clean his blood off the ground, it could not be removed. And they declared this a miracle. And, like in folk saint fashion, they built a shrine on top of his grave. You're seeing a theme here.
Yeah.
Shortly after his execution, though, and here's where we're diving into if he's innocent or not, the story began circulating that he was innocent and had been framed by a superior officer, Jesse Cardoza, who was guilty of the crime. So residents began reporting strange events associated with Soldado's gravesite shortly after his death, including blood seeping from his grave and ghostly voices. Others began leaving stones at his tomb just like before, attributing miraculous occurrences to them. So I kind of liked your comment of earlier of like spooky things happening.
Yeah.
When you don't have a proper burial.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't really have a proper burial, and he was known to be wrongly accused.
Gotcha.
That's going to make a ghost.
To get pent up anger and yeah.
So that's probably why in my novice ghost expertise, why they started hearing like ghostly voices shortly after. So, in the old Puerta Blanca cemetery, there are now small chapels dedicated to Juan Soldado. The first one is the edge of the Pantheon where he died. The second chapel is for all to enter and is where it says he is buried. Both chapels are regularly visited and prayed at by people who have problems crossing the border into the United States or who are involved in the trafficking of people in the borderland. So devotees have also claimed that he has interceded for them in other areas such as health and family problems. So other shrines to Juan Soldado can be found elsewhere throughout the region, while votive candles, ex voto cards, offerings, and other religious items devoted to him are sold throughout northwestern Mexico and areas of California and Arizona.
Huh.
Yeah, where immigrants passing through the region have established communities. So I don't think I've seen any like relics or any kind of religious item associated with him in like the Eberias I visit, but maybe I just wasn't paying attention. So his following, once again, like the readings I keep calling it a cult, which I feel it's not representative. Soldado's followings reflect in some ways the unsettling community that Tijuana was and is. The Catholic Church had no well-established local saints in Tijuana region, and itself compromised in the eyes of many by its association with the powerful interests against whom the Mexican Revolution had been fought. So Soldado, a humble, nearly anonymous immigrant from the countryside who was allegedly wrongly accused by authorities, was a fitting symbol of upheavals that people of that area and region confronted. So it's like you see yourself in this figure and you're comforted by that. And it's more of a relatable saint than, I guess, all these saints that you read in the Bible who are like pious and have done no wrong in a way.
Completely holy and
yeah, because when you find yourself down in the dumps, like it's hard to just stay on track. So it's like, oh, here's this person that kind of relates to finding yourself in a hard time.
And maybe has not made the best choices.
Exactly.
I'm going to have to ask my dad if he knows anything about him because my father actually illegally crossed. He's now a citizen after years and years and years, but I'm going to have to ask him because I'm wondering if he maybe knows anything about him. He actually had to hide in a giant flower pot while they drove him. Yeah, they drove him across the border. My mom was a U.S. citizen. She was born in L.A., but they hid him in a giant flower pot while my aunt drove down. And they didn't even check the pot or anything like that. And he taught himself English, and he's such a great person. And he studied so hard to become a citizen, and he finally became a citizen. He's so proud of himself. I'm proud of him. Like, it's crazy.
And it's not an easy thing either.
No, he spent
contrary
years.
to popular belief. You can't just do it the right way, quote unquote. Like most of these people people that I know who have done it the right way, it took years. And the right way is such a weird term because they didn't come over here the right way. They didn't come in like, here's my papers, I'm ready to take a test. Like, no, it's like they had to sneak over in a flower pot. Like my grandma came over as a visitor, just as a tourist, and just never left. Yeah. She's in her late 70s, almost 80s, and she received her citizenship like not even like maybe like 2 decades ago.
Oh,
yeah, so that was a very long process. So yeah, no, it's not easy. Yeah, it's really not.
I have a really close friend too. She came over as a dreamer. So she was going to school and doing all that, and she just got her papers. And even then, like, she didn't wait as long as other people, but her talking about having to pay all these lawyer fees and going through all these interviews and how she couldn't get a tattoo because they could kick her out.
Gosh.
It was insane. And it makes me so lucky to have been born here and that my parents took the risk to, come over here and stuff. So
yeah, I always feel like I did nothing.
Yeah. I
was just lucky. I just happened to be born on the side of the imaginary line.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand why people would put like their faith into this
guy,
person.
This person.
Yeah, this idea, this symbol. Because that's all it really is. Like, people just need something to have faith in. And let's see, Jose Luis Gonzalez, who's a professor at Mexico's National School of Anthropology, kind of summed it up into words. The emotional pressures, the tension of living in a time of crisis lead people to look for symbolic figures that can help them face danger. So even if at the end of the day these figures end up not existing, it's just that hope that you have to pull through.
Yeah.
And then in areas where the followings are the strongest, such as Sinaloa and Tijuana, like these dangers are present every day.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And if you're surrounded by that, you need something to kind of take you out of that and just give you some hope and that it's going to get better and you're going to get out of there.
Yeah, and if you hear like a friend of a friend say, hey, I pray to Soldado, or I pray 10 times a day to Malverde, and he heard me and he repaid it, like, hell yeah, why wouldn't you try?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like, okay, well, if it worked for him, like, surely it'll work for me.
You have nothing else to lose. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, in these situations, you have nothing to lose. You're, like, exactly right. So, yeah, those are my folk saints. Like,
that was super interesting. I'm glad you shared that with me because I knew nothing about them. So...
yeah, like, I feel like I know more about these guys than, like, the actual saints. And, yeah, let me stress that these saints are not supported by the Catholic Church. Like, even the Catholic Church has said, like, hey, these guys are too fun.
No, thank you.
They're not in our party. No, that's not their words verbatim, but that's my Cliff Notes version.
Spark Notes.
Yes, Spark Notes. Saves my life.
Huh. Wow. Well, we got through it.
We did it.
Episode 1.
Yay! Cheers.
That went you're all the way across the room.
Oh, we're cheersing. So, how are we ending this?
Well, thank you guys for listening.
Yes. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, any comments, any
recommendations,
yes,
want to yell at us, complain to us.
I'm a little too fragile for that right now.
Go easy on us, please.
It really does, like, it's kind of a big step, like, putting your stuff out there.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's why I didn't do comedy for very long, because I'm like,
don't judge me.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure here.
I'm not in high school anymore. Don't do that to me.
Yeah, like, you just want to, like, relive all those traumas. Like,
no, thank you.
That was, like, more middle school than high school. Elementary school, but we won't. I'm not going to torture
We're not going to go in there, no.
That's scarier than self-combustion.
The dark days, no thank you. But yeah, if you guys want to leave us a 5-star review, leave any comments or let us know, you can find us at Booz Podcast. That is spelled BOOZ Podcast, and that is on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the socials.
All the social media avenues. And I'm a person who's open to constructive criticism. Please let us know if there's anything you suggest, or if there's even a topic that you're interested in, or if you just want to be like, hey, look at this other cool saint. And also, what I did not mention is I'm a visual person, so it's always really hard for me to podcast or listen to podcasts and drive at the same time, because I'm always Googling images. Like,
You're one of those. How dare you?
I know. I'm so bad that I judge other people for being on their phones, but I'm like, I just need to know what this person looks like.
Don't do that.
Please.
Don't do that.
Especially if you're driving, don't, because we will upload all the pictures you need to see on our Instagram.
Yep.
Yay.
Awesome. And then if you ever want to know about our episode resources, we do have a link on our website, which is also Booz Podcast. Again, that is BOOZPODCAST.com. And we will have a resource link there to link to all of our resources and anything else that we think you guys might want to look at or check out. And you can also email us at boozpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to our first episode.
And we'll catch you next time.
We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.